For centuries, people have been naming the stars all across the sky, like Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, except, of course, for the Sun, and Proxima Centauri, the closest star system to our own solar neighborhood. It's 4.3 light years away. But then we've got the equally charming stars like HD 209458. Now who could forget a name like that? Or any other of the HD catalogue, which consists of, as you may guess, their name is an HD followed by a bunch of numbers. And there are also WASP catalogues, so there is a WASP star followed by a bunch of numbers as well. Now these stars don't sound as appealing as the other ones. And there is kind of a good reason for that. These bright stars like Sirius and Alpha Centauri are visible to our naked eye. So our ancestors just looking up at the sky could see them night after night, so gave them names. Now a name like Sirius is quite a special name and links into the mythology of what they thought that constellation was about. But what about a name like Alpha Centauri? Well, that means it's in the constellation Centauri, and the alpha prefix means that it's the brightest star in the Centauri cluster. You see, in constellations, the stars are labelled based on how bright they are compared to the other stars. So you start with Alpha, then you go to Beta and work your way through the Greek alphabet until you get to Omega. But these names aren't really too exciting. But what if you could still name stars? Well, there's a company called the International Star Registry, which claims that you can still do that. With a small sum of $110, you could register a star with whatever name you please on an International Star Registry. But is that star registry recognized? You see, the International Astronomy Union is kind of the body that decides how everything in space is named and categorized. They're of course very popular for their decision, their correct decision, of making Pluto a dwarf planet, supposedly downgrading it from a planet. But they also decide what things get named. So is this star registry part of the International Astronomy Union? Well, the short answer is it's not. So then the question becomes, what is it? Well, if you do some digging around like my supervisor Brad Tucker has done, you'll discover that this is pretty much an enormous scam. So what happens is people give them money, then they'll choose a star and they'll put it in a book that this International Star Registry owns, but they won't be recognized by anything else except that. So effectively, this company has been scamming people out of $110 every time someone registers a star with them. And apparently, well, at least according to them, they've named 2 million stars. So you can do the math pretty quickly. 2 times 110, well, that's 220. So they've apparently made $220 million off of the sale of these stars. Where has that money gone? Well, it's certainly not to astronomy. And unfortunately for the people that have named those stars, they've gotten nothing for that money at all. So unfortunately, stars are stuck with these kind of weird names like HD 209458, because that's just the way the International Astronomy Union works. But you could decide for yourself that you'll call this star in the sky by this name and it will have a special significance to you. That is, in essence, what this star registry is doing. So save your money and skip the difficulty of trying to register a star with them and just pick a star out of the sky and think about some good times to associate with it. But on the topic of naming things, you can actually name some stuff in space. The International Astronomy Union does let people name asteroids and comets. With comets, the name has to be after the person who discovered it. So if you're a rather lucky person who's found a number of comets, like an astronomer called McNaught, you'll find that you have a number of comets named after yourself. But for asteroids, the rules are slightly different and quite bizarre. You see, you're not allowed to name after yourself, but you're allowed to name after other people. So you'll find asteroids going around the place with rather benign names, like one named after a famous astronomer, Fred Watson. So there are all these rules surrounding how things can be named in space. And there are rules that are just ignored by the International Star Registry. So if the idea ever comes up that you want to name a star or name something in space, so don't be tricked by the International Star Registry's claims. They will effectively just steal your money. So this has in essence been a public service announcement from an astronomer that these stars are not for sale. But if you're so lucky as you find a comet or an asteroid, you can name it either after yourself or after someone else or something else entirely.